And now let's take wing across 3 counties to Cambridge, and light on the roof of King's College Chapel, to look down on the younger of the twin cities. Here there's no range of glittering spires, but a more intimate city, a quaint confusion of broad streets and narrow winding lanes. It's less compassed by waters than Oxford, but most of the colleges are ranged on the banks of its one little river, which completes the perfect setting of beautiful old buildings and shady lawns. King's College Chapel, the finest example of the architecture of its period in the world. Most of King's is new except the chapel and the gateway, but the modern buildings blend with the old round the great lawn where the foot of man has scarcely trod, for only learned fellows of the college may walk on the grass. Peterhouse was the first college to be founded in Cambridge, and it was here that the poet Gray lived and worked on his famous elegy. Jesus College buildings were originally those of a Benedictine nunnery, but suppressed a century before the Reformation. And Cambridge, too, is a city of cycles, moving in tiny traffic rushes, timed by the opening and closing of the schools and the lectures. The basket carrier comes in handy for everything from books to bottles or blossoms. And Cambridge must be a sad puzzle to the foreigner, for its streets all change their names every few hundred yards, or even less. King's Parade here has 5 different names in less than a mile, most of them taken from the colleges which line the other side of the street, and at its far end is St. John's, the most beautiful of all Cambridge gateways. And next is Trinity, the largest of the colleges, with its famous court and the fountain on the left, which is occasionally used for ducking unpopular persons. Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, Byron, Macaulay, Thackeray, and Tennyson were all students here. This gateway used to stand where the sundial is, and was part of the original hall, founded by Edward III, whose statue was put here 300 years later. However, it's now been up for 300 years, and perhaps the slightest forgotten. Certainly the calm and peace of quiet cloisters should produce good students. There's an atmosphere about these places. Each has nearby a lovely garden, equally conducive to peace and study, until perhaps the breeze begins to stir, and the English passion for fresh air and exercise begins to stir too. So let's go down to the river, to the lower reaches of the Cam, where every college has its own boathouse, because this is the business end of the river, where rowing is taken seriously. These energetic young men have chosen to enslave themselves to the most hard-working and unselfish sport in the world. Why, it used to be a punishment for convicts. For many hours a week they'll perch themselves in these uncomfortable and wobbly contraptions, freezing in winter and roasting in summer. Why, even the convicts had a roof over them, and work until they drop if necessary. If they let their attention wander for a moment, they're liable to a rain of curses from the smallest man in the boat, who does nothing more strenuous than steer. If they dare to answer him back, they're excommunicated. And all this is voluntary. From start to finish, this game calls for concentration of mind and muscle. Eyes in the boat there! Eyes in the boat, curse you! Nor may you fix your gaze on the stir and drip of the oars, but look at the beefy back in front. And if you have the constitution of an ox and the patience of Job, you may achieve the honour of rowing for your university, for this is the hardest and most perfect form of teamwork. Only the fittest can take part in it. But everyone criticises, although they don't all care to expend so much energy. And the galley slave must often be tempted away from his duty on a hot afternoon, when there are grandstands like this from which he can watch others work. But let's leave these scenes of energy and visit the quiet upper reaches of the River Cam. Above this point the aspect is entirely different. The river is more narrow and runs at the backs of the lovely old colleges, hence the name for this quarter, the backs. Here nature and man have laboured together to produce scenes of perfect harmony. Here one may come to loaf away a day and be drawn into an exploration of the ever-changing grey-green loveliness of Cambridge and its river. Canoes and punts are the craft for a small river, but need experience in the handling, and there are less embarrassing places to learn the arts than the backs of Cambridge. But the ever-beckoning vistas of greenery are bound to lead us away to Granchester. For hundreds of years, the favourite objective of a Sunday afternoon stroll from Cambridge. Here the river, like the streets, changes its name and becomes the Granter. Granchester, just a typical country village, but known to English-speaking peoples all over the world through the poem of Rupert Brooke. Stands the church clock 10 to 3, and is the honey still for tea? The old mill pool at Granchester, known and loved by all the great Cambridge poets. Chaucer, Spenser, Herrick, Milton, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, Tennyson, down to Rupert Brooke. I only know that you may lie day long and watch the Cambridge sky, and flower-lulled in sleepy grass, hear the cool lapse of hours pass, until the centuries blend and blur in Granchester, in Granchester. And so drift down until the Granter becomes the Cam once more, and we enter Cambridge at eventide.